All right, welcome everyone. This particular lesson is entitled Graphing Inequalities in Two Variables. So let's go ahead and begin. I do not have a 5-minute check on this one, so we'll just jump right in. Now, if you have your graphing calculator, you really should have that out because as we go along, I am going to give you hints and teach you how to use your graphing calculator to do this. That's going to make it a lot easier. For those of you who don't have a graphing calculator, I will show you how to do this by hand. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so you know how to graph linear equations. That's what we've done previously. So now all we're going to do is we're going to graph linear inequalities on a plane. What that means is you're going to be doing shading. So you're still going to have to understand how it works. Calculator can't do everything, okay? And then you're going to solve inequalities by graphing. So we're just going to jump right in, okay? Now here's some of the vocabulary we're going to be talking about. Boundary, a half plane, a closed half plane, and an open half plane. I'll be honest, I personally do not use the terminology half planes, but I do use open and closed, and that makes sense considering that we have solved inequalities, and you know we had open and closed circles, so it's the same type of thing. Okay, so this is how, and this was taken straight out of your textbook, this is how you graph linear inequalities, okay? So you graph the boundary. In other words, you graph the equation. That's what they're telling you. It's solid if the inequality has an equal, and it's dashed if it doesn't. And then they suggest using a test point, but I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit differently, and then it will seem a lot easier. And then you just shade the side that you want to shade, okay? So let's begin. Okay, so here's our first equation. So what we're doing here is we're wanting to graph the equation 2y minus 4x is greater than 6. So the first step you have to do is you have to get y by itself. So what we did here is we added 4x to both sides. And then what we end up with is 2y is greater than 4x plus 6. Okay, and then we divide it through by 2. Now the way I would normally write this, I would separate this out. So you end up with 4x over 2, which is how they got 2x, and then 6 over 2, which is how they got 3. So there is your equation. Now that's something we have been working on and working on and working on. So you definitely want to keep that in mind, okay? So let's go on to the next one, and then we'll actually look at graphing it. Now, if you're graphing this by hand, it's really not that difficult. So we're just going to jump right in. I'm going to show you with some different resources how to do it particularly. So let's start off if you're graphing by hand. So I'm going to pull up my sketch pad, and I'm going to use that to show you graphing by hand. So we're going to start with that group first. All right. And I'm just going to move this over here. Now, let's put a graph on here. And the reason I'm using this is just because it looks nicer and it's easier to see. So now, if you remember, our equation is, let's write that in, or just if you have it written down, you should. Y is greater than 2x plus 3. Okay, so that's the equation that you have. Y is greater than 2x plus 3. So we're going to start, I'm going to use slope-intercept form to graph. You can either do a t-table or x and y intercepts. And so what you want to do is you want to graph y equals 2x plus 3. And if you go back here, you'll see that's exactly what they do, is they graph y equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so let's go back. And so we're going to start with where 3 is, because that's your y-intercept. And so 3 is right there. And then our slope is 2, which is 2 over 1. So we're going to go up 2 and then to the right 1. Okay? And then now I picked my 2 points, and I'm going to actually construct my line. Okay, like I said, this just looks so much nicer. Now, notice that the inequality was y was greater than 2x plus 3. That means that this has to be a dashed line. So, you know how you make a line and you just make it dashed, you can erase. That's what I do if I do it by hand, and I'll show you that in a second. But I also want to show you how it looks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my line style to dashed. That's why I like this program. So there's my dashed line, okay? So Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention to is where is the shading going to be? If it's greater than, you're going to shade above the line. And if it's less than, you're going to shade below the line. So since this is greater than, hold on, let's use the mouse and make, oh, hang on, my mouse is not connected. Let me get that in. That might make it easier. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, and this is all I do to shade. Whoops. Let's undo that. Let's not let go carried away. Now, it's everything above this line. Let's do that so I don't do any more. Okay, everything above this line, but not including this line. I just shade in that general direction, and that's the general idea. I don't use my pencil and run my lead out to totally shade. It's not possible to shade every point. And the reason you're shading an area because it's every number that's greater than that line. And so there's lots of numbers that are bigger than this line, or lots of ordered pairs, lots of points that are above this line. So that's how you would do it. Now this is a program, so you see it looks all nice and neat. Now, what I want to do is I want to go back to my sketch pad. I mean, not my sketch pad. I want to go back to Active Inspire. And let's do one freestyle. So I'm just going to put in a new page. And actually, I don't need to do that because it's right here. So you see they have the same thing that I have. So it's a dashed line. And then now they select a point. As you see, I don't normally do that. Notice we got the same thing and they shaded above. So dashed line and shading. That's some of the things that I look for when I look for this graph. Sorry about that. So we just want to pay attention to that. Okay, now let's see. I think what I want to do next, they have an example for you to do, but I'd like us to do one more, and I have one, I think. Yes, I have one that we can do. So, yeah, let me show you how to do that by hand, and then I'm going to show you guys on the calculator, because just in case some of you forget your calculator, which does seem to happen quite often, you need to know how to do this by hand. So let's do a new page, and what I want to do is the equation we're going to graph. Now this one's already in the right form, so we don't have to work really hard, but we're going to graph. Okay, y is greater than, you know what, let's make it y is less than, just so you can see, because it's the same thing, but you need to realize, okay, let's make it y is less than 1/2 x plus 3. So we're going to graph this by hand. Now all we're doing is we're graphing y equals 1/2 x plus 3. So we're going to do plus 3. Remember, that's on the y-axis. So there you go. And then we're going to go up 1 and to the right 2. So up 1 and to the right 2. Eyeballing it. Now, notice that this is a dashed line. Okay. If I were to put an equal here, this would be a solid line. All right, so there we have it. Now, notice the reason I wanted to show you what less than looks like is because notice that here it's y is less than. So it's all the numbers that are smaller. So then I want to shade below the line. And that's really all it is to the shading. If it's less than, it's lower below the line. And if it's greater than, it's above the line. Personally, I find that much easier than the whole looking for a test point. Now, one of the things you have to notice though, notice that I always solved for y. And I found, even when I was an Algebra 1 student, it was much easier to do it that way, to always have y by itself, and then it was easier to know where to shade. I'll be honest, I do this all the time, and I still have a little difficulty doing it if it's in standard form. But if y is by itself, I can knock it out. So that's just something you might want to keep in mind, okay? Let's go down a little bit and let's do one more. So let's graph, and then I'm going to show you how to do this on the calculator. Okay. For those of you on the TI directions are actually in your textbook, but those of you who are on a Casio, on your Google Classroom, I've actually attached a page that shows you how to do the calculator, okay, using a Casio. But I'm going to show you here as well. Okay, so notice that this is the same thing except y is on the other side. So I'm just going to do it this way. X minus 1. Notice that the greater than is still going to x minus 1. Okay, so now we're going to do that. Now this is a dashed line, so I'm going to do -1, up 1 and to the right because my slope is a 1 because there's no number there. 1 and to the right, so there. And let's just change the color. Now, normally if I do this with a pencil, what I do is I just draw the line using my ruler, and then I just erase a bunch, but I don't really care however you want to do it. Okay, now pay attention to the fact that this is a less than, so that means I'm shading below the line, okay? And that's how that works. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you I want to go with the first example and show you a couple of examples of how to do this using the graphing calculator. And so I think we want to start with the Casio first. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to pause for just... Alrighty, I'm on the Casio, so I'm going to show you how I would do that. Now, we're going to do the y is greater than 2x plus 3 example, just to kind of show you. So here, if you hit menu, you come back to the main menu. I'm going to hit 3 for graph. Okay, and let's delete that because I don't necessarily need that. Okay. And okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually put in the equation. Now, the nice thing about the Casio is, notice it says y equals, but what I need is y is greater than. So if I hit F3 for type, and let's turn on the keylog and have it record, and then that way you can see what I typed in. Okay, so I'm hitting F3, and then I don't see y is greater than, so I'm going to hit this arrow, so that's F6. And then there is y is greater than, y is less than, y is greater than or equal to, y is less than or equal to. You must change the type before you enter the equation. You can't do it after it because it changes everything after, but not the one you're working on. So I'm going to hit F1, and then notice it changed it at the top. So it's y is greater than what I want. And we want 2x plus 3. So 2x plus 3. And I'm going to hit execute. Notice that it also showed me this is a dashed line, which is what I wanted. So it's going to ask me to draw. My window's looking a little raggedy, so I'm just going to hit Shift F3, and I'm going to go to a standard window. Okay. Now let's draw again. There, now you can see the whole thing. And see, it's shaded above just like we did. Now the computer is really nice because it goes, right there. Okay, now let's do, let's put in another one. So I'm going to exit, and I want to go back up, and I'm just going to type on top of this one. Okay, actually let's unselect it. Okay, well I deleted it. Let's say yes. Okay, now this one I wanted it to be, we did y is less than or equal to. So I need to change the type before I type it in. So notice here, and then F6 again, and then less than or equal to. Okay, so now we have y is less than or equal to, excuse me, let's do 1/2 x, so 1, fraction key, half, or 2, and then x, and then we're going to do plus 3. And there you go, and we're going to ask it to draw. And there you go. Literally with the Casio, it is that simple. Notice it's a solid line. I want to go back. Notice the line is solid. So see, that's the nice thing. Casio really does tell you to do that. So very nice, very easy to do. And keep in mind, here are the keystrokes that I used to type in those two equations. Okay, so everything I typed in, now you have it. All right. So now we're going to look at doing this on a TI. Okay, so let's do that next. Okay, and then, yep. Oh, and then we just got to graph a bunch and solving, and we're good. Okay. And let's see. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to pause this a minute, and I'm going to put up the other one. All right, welcome everyone. Okay, now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at what it looks like on a TI. This is an 84 plus emulator, but 83 is very similar. Okay, so I'm on a blank screen. I just turned it on. So I'm going to hit Y equals. So I hit F1, and I'm going to clear that because I don't need that equation. So there, it's blank. Now, the only other thing I would advise you is if you need to change the window, the easiest way to change it back to a standard window is to click on Zoom. And then if you look at 6, that's Z standard. So I'm going to hit 6. I know you guys like to arrow down. I just hit 6. And it's taken me now. Now you're seeing here in the window, it tells you exactly what the window is. That's the old equation because I haven't put anything in. And then here's the graph. And what you're seeing here on the right is you're seeing what I'm actually keying in to get what I'm doing. So now let's go back to Y equals. And now let's put in the equation. The equation was 2x plus 3. So 2x plus 3. Okay. Now, here's the difference. I need to go back in front of it. You see this little dash line? That's going to change what it looks like. And in order to make it shade, let's see, I'm going to go back in front. And you can do this before. Okay, so you see now there's the line and it's blinking. Okay, now with the TI, what you do is you just hit enter. So I'm going to hit enter. And it darkens the line. And I'm going to hit enter again. Now, you see that diamond shaped? That means it's greater than. And see, it just did it on this screen. When I go back to graph, it'll do it. Now, if you want less than, you just hit enter again. So watch, it'll change it. Okay, it didn't. And then, there it did change. It takes a second. Okay, and then you hit enter again and you can take it back. Okay, so this is just a matter. Here's the nice thing. If you mess up and go past it, it doesn't matter. Just keep hitting enter until you get it back. You're going to see a whole lot of enters here, but that's okay. Okay. So let's take it back to, was it greater than? Yes. Okay. And I am done. Now you have to go back over here. If you hit enter while it's over there, it's going to change it again. So now I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to tell it to graph. And see, it just graphed for you. So the difference with the TI is you have to tell it if it's greater than or equal to. The Casio is a little bit easier to do, but you can still do it on here. And again, you're looking for the triangle at the top. If it's at the bottom, it's less than, and if it's at the top, it's greater than. And there you tell it to graph. That's pretty much all it is to doing it on a TI. Okay? So now, I'm going to go back and see, here is your, let me move that so then you can pause if you need to on the screen. But here is your key entry, so you see exactly what keys I hit in order to get where I got. Okay? So I'm going to move that back up, and then let's go back to our notes and get finished up. Okay, so now I have shown everybody how to do it, whether you're doing it by hand or not. Okay, so now we're going to go through, and you're going to answer this one, pause it, answer it, and then keep going. Okay, now this one we're going to do the same thing, only now we have to work a little harder to solve for y. So what you're going to do is we subtracted x from both sides, and then we're going to divide all the way through by 4. Okay, and then you want to graph that. Notice it's greater than or equal to, so it's a solid line. Okay, and again, I just put in the inequality. I don't worry about the test points. Okay, here's another one for you to do where again you have to solve it for y. That's how the calculator is going to work, and I do think it's easier than leaving this in standard form personally, because I always use the graphing calculator. Okay, and I think even if you're doing it by hand, it's easier to tell where the shading is going to be. Okay, so there's 2. Now here you're going to use a graph. Notice there's no y, there's only x. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. Okay, and then you're going to divide by 2. So if you subtract 3 from both sides, what you have in here is you have 2x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2, and you get x equals 2. So let me write that in just in case some of you don't see that. So what they did here, it's 2x equals 4 because they subtracted 3 from both sides. And then divide both sides by 2. So x equals 2, and that takes you back there. Okay, just so you kind of know where that is. Alrighty, okay, so now When you graph it, x equals 2 is a vertical line going up and down, and it's solid because it was greater, it was, let's go back here. This was less than or equal to, okay? So what you have is x is less than or equal to 2. So here's your solid line, okay? And then it should be shading to the left. Yep. Okay, so x is less than or equal to 2. And there is your shading. Okay, so that's how you solve it looking at it. But keep in mind, you can't give me 1 point because it is a set of ordered pairs. Inequalities, there's lots of points in there that'll fit. Okay, now here's one for you to do. You're trying to solve this and see which one of these matches this. You can probably just tell from the graph, which is not a bad thing. Okay, so now this one is a word problem, and it's not super long, but I'm going to walk you through it real quick. He writes and edits short articles for a local newspaper. It takes him about an hour to write an article and about half an hour to edit an article. If he works up to 8 hours a day, how many articles can he write and edit in one day? So you want to know how long it takes him to write and edit an article and how long he works each day. You have to know that up front. Okay? So number of articles he can write plus 1/2 times y, the number of articles he can edit, is less than or equal to 8 hours. It can't be greater than, because you can't go over the 8. It has to be under. Okay, so there's your equation. So you have x plus 1/2 y is less than or equal to 8. Subtract x from both sides, and then multiply both sides by 2 over 1, or divide by 1/2, whatever you want to do. So you're going to get y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 16. Okay, then what you do there, okay, so you graph the inequality, okay, and again, they use the whole test point. So he can't work negative hours. Oh, that's the check. Okay. So basically what you're looking at is here's your 8 hours. So it's got to be below this. Remember, it's got to be below the 8 hours. So it's underneath the line, so it's less than or equal to. Okay. And you should have seen that from this inequality right here. And there you go. Okay, so now here's one for you to do. This might take you a few minutes, so feel free to use that time. Okay. And guys, we are done. That's the whole video. Please feel free to play it as much as you need to. Practice with it. I have a bunch of sample problems for you to practice with. So, and you have your homework. So we will see you on the next video.